Okay, we're good to go.
I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed to the roll call, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are meeting in our various locations within the town of Fort Erie is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live in this area. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. There is an addendum this evening with respect to the Winter Operations Plan Report IS 36-2020. It's quite a lengthy document. And one announcement, and that really relates to COVID-19 and what's been going on. I had some comments last meeting. This week, I'm sad to say that we're averaging about a case a day in Fort Erie. We're now up to 41. About August the 20th, we were around 26. And so it continues to grow. I'm a little disappointed. Let me go first to my appreciation. I'm appreciative that the vast majority of people in our community have taken to the guidelines very seriously. And they're doing their very best to make sure that they do follow the guidelines of maintaining physical distance, washing their hands. If they can't maintain physical distance, wearing a mask, doing all the things that they can to protect their families, their friends, their neighbors, and those they come in contact with. And so Fort Erie has done very well in terms of all the municipalities in Niagara. We're the fourth largest municipality by population. We're the fourth lowest in terms of case incident per 10,000 residents. So we're doing very well, and I think we need to be appreciative of that. And a lot of that has to do with not only the residents, but also the good work of the municipal staff who have been very, very vigilant in ensuring that the workers of the town of Fort Erie are safe and follow safe practices. And I want to thank council for supporting all of the work that's been done. I'm a little disappointed when I see on social media people gathering as if this was 2019, as if nothing is really happening. And it's rather discouraging because everyone has the ability to comply with the guidelines. Everyone has the ability to ensure that we shorten this pandemic sooner rather than later. And the problem that we're faced with is if the cases continue to rise in Fort Erie and in Niagara in particular, and Niagara has seen, although a week ago the average was about 6.7 new cases per day, that number will be higher this week as a 7-day average because the number of cases has been going up and some of the municipalities have had real struggles. I don't want Niagara to be in the same position that Toronto and Peel and Ottawa is in. I don't want people's jobs to be at risk. I don't want businesses to be at risk because people in the community can't or won't take the time to be responsible and comply with the guidelines. So the message this evening is, as it has been all along, please follow the guidelines, do the very best that you can to have regard for those around you. We have rights. We all know we have rights, but with rights come responsibilities. And so let's be responsible and let's make sure that we don't put businesses out of business. We don't put people out of jobs simply because we can't take the time to be responsible. And the sooner we all cooperate, the sooner we'll get past this. So that's this evening's message. In terms of declarations of pecuniary interest, are there any declarations? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 9, Infrastructure Services 9.2 reports IS 36-2020 Winter Operations Plan for fall 2020 to spring 2024. My business is currently engaged with a couple of the contractors awarded.
Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? Madam Clerk, I have a similar disclosure with respect to the same report, IS 36-2020. One of the contractors is a client of my law firm, and that's item 9.2. And I'll get the yellow slip to you eventually. There is a notice of an upcoming public meeting with respect to a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 7 Central Avenue and 100-1 Queen Street. And that's with respect to the proposed new high-rise building at the corner of Queen Street and Garrison Road. That meeting will be held Monday, November the 2nd, 2020 at 6 p.m. It'll be done digitally as we've done recently. The information report with respect to that public meeting will be available on our website on Wednesday, October the 28th, 2020. There are no public meetings this evening. That takes us to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, could I have a motion for the Councillor Dubanow to move the items, the reports and the recommendations in the consent agenda? Are there any questions with respect to any of those reports? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just a comment in regards to CS 17-2020, the extension of the lease of the EDTS. I did have a chance to talk to Kimberly, Ms. McDermott today regarding the timing and everything else. And I think they're all looking forward to coming into Town Hall with the COVID-19 and the renovation's not yet done yet. But I wouldn't mind getting an update on where we are with the renovations. I know we passed something not that long ago in regards to timelines. Wonder.
Yep, Mr. Cookett.
To your worship, to the councillor. Yes, they're eager to get into Town Hall. It's working well with them becoming a department. There's a lot of collaboration between engineering and planning and all of Town Hall, and it's working out really well. Unfortunately, with COVID, we haven't been able to get the contractors in here to do the renovations and create their new offices. So we have put out an RFP. The RFP, we're hoping that we can complete the works now with COVID and the second wave coming through there. Once again, it may have maybe delaying things a little bit, but we are looking forward to getting in here. And if we have to have the contractor come in and work on weekends or nights, we will do so.
Councillor Noyes.
Nothing further, thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just two quick comments about, comments about 2 reports on here. The first one, the FES-04-2020, the proposed fireworks regulation updates. I just want to extend my appreciation to Chief Melanson for finding a balance between the concerns of the community and the some of the issues that have been expressed, as well as the desire for many in our community to continue to be able to use fireworks both for themselves and to have those events in our community that we use Canada Day and other things like that. I think it was an excellent balance. I particularly like the inclusion of the additional holidays that qualify as well. So I just wanted to extend my appreciation to the chief. And the second one is IS 34-2020, the new Zamboni. And I sent a quick email off to Mr. Hutton, our facilities manager, as well as Mr. Walsh, the infrastructure director. I had a constituent reach out to me regarding how they're powered. Are these electric powered or do they use fossil fuels? And I was actually pleased to find out, even though this isn't an electric Zamboni, that we actually use natural gas, which of the fossil fuels is actually, one of the cleaner ones, and that we have our own filling station. And it actually allows us to balance both the financial implications as well as the greenhouse gas implications. And I was very pleased with that. And I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions? I had a few questions. The first has to do with the Zamboni report, and the question, and I suppose Mr. Walsh, you may be able to answer this. Are there other competitors that would have equipment similar to Zamboni?
There is one other competitor. Olympia makes ice resurfacers as well. There's a number of issues with them and their operation within our rinks, mostly technical. That we are sole sourcing Zamboni brand.
Right, and we've done that consistently, and it seems to be a reliable product that has served us well over the years.
Yes.
Okay. The second is report CS 18-2020 with respect to the appointment of an auditor. And I note that because we're in an emergency situation, there's been an emergency order made by the CAO that would extend this contract for a year regardless. I note that the increase from last year to this year is 8.4%, and it will be over the 3 years if it were to be extended an additional 2 years beyond next year, 15.44%. I appreciate the fact that we're in a difficult time to be doing RFPs with respect to this type of service, but I would hope that if circumstances warrant, next year we will seriously look at that and at least make sure that we've gone to the market. And I mean, it's not an extremely large contract, but it's sufficiently large that I think it would be helpful. That's my comment. Then I had a comment with respect to the fireworks ban, so that I was hoping that we could get some clarification, Chief, with respect to section 10.1. And that was, if I can find it here. Yeah, in both 6.6, sorry, section 6.6 and 8.6, there's a provision that states that a permit will be issued if certain things are done by the applicant. 10.1 says no provisions of this bylaw shall obligate the town to authorize the issuance of a permit. So I'm hoping, Chief, or maybe the clerk, that we can clarify that 10.1 would override section 6.6 and section 8.6 with respect to an obligation to issue a permit before we deal with this at the bylaw stage, which presumably would be next week. Thank you. If there are no other questions, then I'm going to call the question with respect to the consent agenda items. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. That then takes us to Planning and Development Services, and that is Councillor Zanko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services is now in session. We do not have any presentations or delegations this evening. So that brings us to report PDS 45-2020, proposed zoning bylaw amendment to 0 Town Line Road. Can I get a mover? Councillor McDermott. That report's on the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. This has been a project that's been ongoing with a lot of dialogue both ways from the developer and from those people who live close. I think it's been a good collaboration and a good consensus back and forth. I do know that in the report, it's very well stated, there's still some outstanding issues in regards to the lighting, the pedestrian walkway or bike lane, the wastewater management, the traffic flashing light, no left turn on Netherby Road. There's a lot of these issues that still, I understand, will be worked out at the site plan level. So it's not that we've forgotten it, that there's a process that will address all these issues. I am concerned a little bit about the wastewater management. It seems like it may be, it's a process I don't think I'm familiar with, where an agreement that was signed in 1990 now comes into play in 2020 in regards to sharing a septic pumping station. But the report does talk about how there has to be some dialogue and some collaboration and there's rules and regulations and laws that'll fall into place, and hopefully this will be clarified and rectified and it will go forward. But I know a lot of the residents are concerned about the wastewater management and the pumping station at the leisure homes and what that may do to their community in regards to connecting to it and that. So, but again, I don't think we can hold up this development, and nor would I suggest that. But it's interesting that, again, an agreement on title in 1990 is now coming to play. So there's a lot of questions how this is going to eventually work out, but I'm sure it will. Thank you.
Mayor Redekop.
Thank you. Just to follow up with Councillor Noyes' last point about the wastewater situation, I wonder if Ms. Dolch can comment on that. I mean, it seems to me that it's going to boil down to two private entities having to negotiate the capacity and any upgrades that might be necessary. But I wonder if we could have Ms. Dolch confirm that and maybe advise what the town's role would be.
Sure. Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. At this point in time, the town's role right now is the zoning bylaw amendment process. The only request we have at this point is for the gas bar. Obviously, the servicing capacity is not something we would deal with in a zoning stage. We would deal with that through the site plan process. The site plan process, the town will be looking to make sure that there's capacity to move these developments forward. The larger concern is the restaurant facility, the drive-through restaurant facility. The sewage levels are higher than what the gas bar would be. So obviously that's where we'll be looking for a lot of information and dialogue between both Parkbridge and this developer. They do need to sort that out before the town approves that. We will be looking for that servicing information and the details of that servicing information through the site plan approval process. And then in terms of what happens in between, that will be between the two parties.
Thank you. And with respect to Town Line Road, there's an indication in the report that that's going to have to be upgraded. Who's paying for the upgrade?
Through you to the mayor. All indications at this point would be it's the developer. Our feeling is the developer pays for any improvements that are necessary based on their development. And at this point in time, whatever their development needs in terms of improvements, which Mr. Walsh has advised that the road does need to be upgraded, that would be their responsibility.
I did have a concern with respect to traffic and the suggestion, I believe, from the consultant that there should be a left-hand turn lane off of Netherby Road onto Town Line. The region takes the position that the road is sufficiently wide at that particular point to permit vehicles to pass on the right, and that's quite correct. But then it almost immediately narrows down to a single lane just as the road bends. So I'm wondering how comfortable we should be that the current configuration, as the region states, is adequate and there's no need for a turn lane, presumably because the region would be have to pick up half the cost of that turn lane. I wonder if we could have comment on that, Madam Chair.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. And we can talk further with the region on that through the site planning process. But at this point in time, obviously, they've indicated that there's no issue on their end. But we can look into that further once we have a little more detail on the design of the site. It's hard at this point in time because it's conceptual. Once they get into the site details, it's a bit easier to kind of pinpoint what kind of traffic levels and loads we'll have.
Right, and my recollection is, though, that the consultant that did the study felt that there should be a left-hand turn lane. So are we to rely upon the consultant or the staff at the region as to what the needs are? Madam Chair.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. When we ask for a traffic study, that traffic study obviously is shared with the region. The region, because it is their roadway, would assess the needs onto their roadway. So at that point, we would look to the region, but we can have further dialogue advising we have some concerns.
I'd appreciate that. And Madam Chair, if I might, the other concern that I have would be people wanting to make a left-hand turn off of Town Line Road onto Netherby, because I presume that there will be additional traffic coming to this site, particularly once it's built up to have all three components. And that is going to create some increase in traffic and probably more difficulty for people wanting to make that left-hand turn. Have we made any plans with respect to a left-hand turn lane? Madam Chair, perhaps I could direct that to Ms. Dolch as well.
Yes, Ms. Dolch.
Through to the mayor. I'll have to look into that a bit further on the left-hand turn lane there.
Thank you. And I notice in the report, there's some discussion about the water service. My understanding is that this property is serviced with water. So is there a municipal water line as well as a regional trunk main? Maybe Mr. Walsh knows that.
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, off the top of my head, I believe there's both there. Certainly a town main.
Right, because I noticed that in the report, it says that the region will not permit this development to tap into their water main, which I think is pretty typical. There were some concerns expressed by a number of people, as Councillor Noyes has mentioned. Those are primarily going to be addressed at the site plan stage. Is that correct?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor, yes, that's correct. We will be looking at all that in further detail once we get to the site design stages.
And then finally, Madam Chair, just some clarification with respect to the archaeological aspect of this. We know that there was a study, we know that it was sent to the region, we know that it was forwarded to the province, and we know that it was approved, but now there's a request for some further archaeological assessment, not because the boundaries of the plan have been changed, but perhaps something within the boundary hadn't been examined. Is that correct?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor, perhaps I can ask Daryl Vanderveen. He's in the waiting room to answer that. He might have more details on why on that. And I believe Kelly's bringing him in now.
Mr. Vanderveen, good evening. Did you hear that question, or would you like the mayor to repeat it?
No, I heard it. Thank you. So through the chair to Mayor Redekop. Yeah, so the region provide comments that the original study area that was examined by the initial archaeological assessment had changed over time as the applicant defined the boundary of the development. So they will be asking for an updated assessment to cover the area that was not covered in the initial assessment.
Yeah, the developer says that there hasn't been a change. At least that's what I got out of this report. Has there in fact been a change?
I believe there has. Oh, sorry, through the chair to Mayor Redekop. The design has gone through a couple of iterations through the pre-consultation process into the actual application. So the region has identified that a small area was not covered by the initial study. So they will have to do an update to their study to account for that additional area.
Right. Was there anything found, Madam Clerk, Madam Chair, to Mr. Vanderveen, was there anything found in the original assessment?
Mr. Vanderveen?
Through the chair to Mayor Redekop, no, nothing was found.
That's not surprising because that's pretty much a disturbed area. For any of you who remember the blizzard of '77, you'll know that there used to be a motel there prior to the fire that took place during the storm and burned down the Landmark Hotel. So I'd be surprised if there's anything there. I had one final question, and that was with respect to the layout here. Appendix 2 shows about 92 kilometers from one edge of the parcel, that's the west edge, where the entranceway will be, all the way east over to the far end of the parcel, and then the parking area, the drive-through, whatever. That seems like a long distance to have it set up this way. Am I misreading that plan?
Ms. Dolch, did you want to comment on that?
I believe this is in metric. It would be 92 meters, not kilometers, 92 meters.
Sorry, did I say
Sorry.
kilometers?
Okay.
Did I say kilometers?
Yeah. Sorry, that is far.
Seems like that's how far I run, and I get very tired after too.
Yes, that is correct. I believe it's in metric. I'm trying to just read the plan, but I believe it's a metric based plan. Yes.
So that's the length of a football field. Actually, it's longer than it's 3 football fields. That seems like a long distance.
It is quite a distance.
Is that something that the town required, or is this just the plan for the developer, Madam Chair?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. At the time, we were trying to align that one driveway with Black Creek Metal to make sure that an additional driveway wasn't placed in front of the residences. So we did move that driveway through our pre-consultation process.
Great. Thanks very much. I appreciate your work on this, and I support this as well.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That report carries. That brings us to new business and inquiries. And we do have a memorandum this evening from Miss Lindsay Richardson regarding the waterfront park marking and deeds. Does any members of council have any questions regarding the memorandum? Councillor Lubberts? You're on mute, Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In the paragraph under deed, it says that staff confirms that the town has a license of occupation. Is that an ongoing license of occupation, or is there expiry date to that or anything?
Ms. Dolch, would you have the answer to that?
Through you to the councillor, there is no expiry date to that. We just have a license to occupy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, does any member of council have any new business or inquiries that they'd like to bring forward tonight? Mayor Redekop?
Yes, thank you very much. I've been getting, and I'm sure some of you have as well, been getting emails from individuals very much interested in the region's current review of its official plan for the purposes of updating it, and in particular, the natural environment policies or natural heritage policies that deal with it. And I'm wondering, I'm on the planning committee at the region, and I've seen an initial report that came out in mid-July. It didn't really talk about options that are being considered, but I'm wondering, Madam Chair, if Ms. Dolch can comment on this at all. I understand she's on a working group with respect to this aspect of the official plan review.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. Yes, so the region is working on obviously their natural heritage policies for their OP update. And what they have right now is they have three options being presented. They have option one, which is an overlay zoning or an overlay designation. And that means it can come off with study, things like that. The overlay for option one would and option two is a designation. So those are the difference between option one and two. Option one and two include the province's original mapping that they presented. So it's a natural heritage mapping for through the growth plan in the south, similar to kind of the Greenbelt plan in the north. Would filter down to the south. So it's not currently what we have now, it's more than what we have now will come into place with options one and two. The third option they have, which is being recommended by their consultant, is options 3, A, B, and C. This is beyond the minimum standards. So this is beyond what the province is dictating through their policy regime. This is going beyond. So those options A, B, and C include different linkages and include designations outside the urban boundary, and when you get to B and C, inside the urban area boundary. The linkages would then link up to natural heritage features. So if you had a feature, say on Town Hall property here, you would have a linkage to another large feature south of Town Hall. That linkage may be anywhere, if it was in A, might be 200 to 400 meters wide to link the two. So that's what they're working on right now. That's what they're recommending. And the concerns that I have on from my end is we haven't seen any detailed mapping at this point in time on any of the options. So that's the concern from my end.
So if I might, Madam Chair, in connection, so the report that council received, regional council received in July, was for information purposes only, didn't make any recommendations with respect to any of the options. What, now that Ms. Dolch is saying that there's options being recommended or an option being recommended, who's making the recommendation at this stage, and I presume that's to the working group?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. Yes, that's correct. It's the consultant who prepared the original report on behalf of the region, and they're recommending options 3A, B, and C, which is beyond the minimum standard. And that's what they're presenting eventually to go out.
And if I might, Madam Chair, so is that what is being delivered to the public in the open houses that I understand are still ongoing?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor, they're presenting all of the options. The mapping options that they show in their illustrations are A, B, and C, because that's what the consultants recommended. Option 1 and 2 are kind of, you can see those mapping options through what the province originally put forward through the growth plan. So those are out there. You just only see 3A, B, and C because that's what the consultant's recommending for the region in terms of beyond minimum standards.
So if I might, Madam Chair, Ms. Dolch just mentioned there's mapping options at the public information centers, and yet she had previously indicated that her concern is that there's been no detailed mapping. I wonder if Ms. Dolch can clarify that for us.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes, that is correct. The mapping options are a snippet of area that they are presenting. It's a snippet in between Welland and Fawn Hill that they've generated, but they don't have a mapping option for Fort Erie. And that's where my concern lies, is I can't see where those linkages may lie. I don't know if it's in key areas where we've provided, invested in infrastructure, anything like that. That's where my concern lies. I'd like to see the mapping in relation to A, B, and C for our area, rather than just in the Welland Pelham area.
Right. So in a nutshell, I think, Madam Chair, what I'm hearing is that a consultant is making recommendations to a working group, which is then being displayed and put forth at public information centers. But there's been no detailed mapping, which means for me, it would be difficult to determine what the implications might be for the municipality if any one of the options were chosen. Is that the essence of Ms. Dolch's concern?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor. That is correct. That is my concern. From an environmental perspective, obviously we have 3 different options that they're presenting. One may be good in one area, but it may not be good in another area. And I'd like to see the mapping in order to make sure that we get the both worlds, and making sure that we're not having implications where we've invested some significant tax dollars in other areas.
Right. And is this something, Madam Chair, that the working group has raised in terms of why isn't there mapping? Can we get mapping, that type of thing?
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the mayor, yes. A few of us in that working group did mention that, and it comes down to costing. The cost to produce these maps are significant, and there's concerns from the region perspective that if they produce an option for A, B, and C, it's a lot of work on their consultants' end and a lot of dollars.
So I'm smiling because I'm trying to anticipate what the circumstances would be where at some point this will come before council, our council, I presume, based on a report from our planner. And I'm trying to envisage a circumstance where we would approve any recommendation without having an understanding of what the implications might be in terms of the land within our municipal boundaries. And how we would be able to ascertain that without mapping, I guess, is pretty fascinating. I would hope that the regional administration doesn't expect that municipalities will be buying a pig in a poke and will adopt a recommendation without knowing exactly what it is the implications will be for our community and for people that own property within our community. And I'm thinking that if the planner of the town of Fort Erie, which has been a leader in terms of trying to address our environmental heritage, has concerns, there must be other municipalities. Madam Chair, I'm fully supportive of doing everything that we can to protect our natural heritage and to integrate it into the development that takes place in our town. I think that's been a hallmark of this council. I think that this council has done more than any other council in trying to breathe life into that vision. This is a little disappointing in that we have some very knowledgeable and active environmentalists in our community. They're very engaged in this, and I don't know that they appreciate the lack of information that is being provided or will be provided to the municipalities when we're being asked to approve something that will have some important and long-term implications for our community. So I very much appreciate Ms. Dolch alerting us to this particular problem, because eventually this will come to the municipality for some type of position. So thank you very much.
Does any other members have any inquiries or items of new business? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to touch on what the mayor had mentioned, I echo his sentiments, and I have the exact same concerns. And I'm just wondering, Your Worship, if you can perhaps just look into this a little further, because I completely agree with you. We should not be approving something if we don't know what we're approving, essentially. So I'm just wondering if you could perhaps take this up as best you can up at the region, and perhaps just keep us in the loop and fill us in what's going on. I echo exactly everything you said with regard to what we do here in Fort Erie with natural heritage, and I'm concerned the exact same as what you raised. I appreciate that, Your Worship.
If I might, Madam Chair, there is a planning committee meeting tomorrow at the region. I will raise this under new business because it's a concern, and I think if we're going to do this, we want to do it right. We want to make sure that we do it on sound information and principles. So thank you.
Any other inquiries or items of new business? Seeing none, does any member of council have any questions regarding the business status report? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. That takes us to infrastructure services. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. There are no presentations or delegations. That brings us to report number IS 35-2020. Can I have a seconder for Winter Operations Plan Fall 2020 to Spring 2024? Oh, thank you, Councillor Zanko. Any comments or questions on this report? Mayor Redekop?
I just had a few questions, and I just want some clarification with respect to several items. So in terms of the sidewalks, what I gleaned from this is that clearing of the sidewalks would start once there's an accumulation of about 8 centimeters. Is that correct?
Mr. Walsh?
So, Madam Chair, I have George Stojanovic in the waiting room. If Kelly Davis can bring him in, he can answer the nuts and bolts of the plan. Thanks, George.
Did he hear, Mayor Redekop, I'm not sure if he heard the question.
I did. Yeah, thanks. So to the mayor's question, yes, the point at which plowing for sidewalks begins is at 8 centimeters. And that's really in line with how we've been proceeding really over the last last number of years. And again, that's in line with the standards that are in OREG 239-02.
And if I might, Madam Chair, there's an indication that there will be up to 48 hours for the town to clear those sidewalks. I presume that's based on some type of priority grid. Used to be that sidewalks that led to schools were first on the list. Is there still a priority grid?
So,
Go ahead.
So the plan currently has all of the sidewalks demarked the same. So what we've tried to do is limit our exposure to risk. And when we're identifying certain sidewalks that are going to get done in a certain priority sequence, if we actually don't achieve those goals, we expose the town to a fair amount of risk. And so on that item, along with a few other items that were in the previous report to now, what we've done is incorporate the standards that are in OREG 239-02 and incorporate them as part of the town's level of service, so that the town's level of service dovetails with the requirements for the regulation.
So,
Mayor Redekop?
yes, so does Ontario Regulation 239 for 2002 state that municipalities have up to 48 hours to clear their sidewalks?
Correct, yes.
That seems to me like a long time, particularly if it's more than 8 centimeters of snow, because it could be a foot of snow. I think if we've got 48 hours to clear them, is that the way it works?
George?
Yeah, so through the chair, we absolutely do need the 48 hours. We have a very large network of sidewalks for clearing. And my experience is that we certainly need that full 48 hours. And again, to reduce our exposure to risk, we want to identify and provide ourselves with the most amount of time that we possibly can to reduce our exposure.
Mayor Redekop?
Well, I certainly appreciate the exposure and the risk and legal liabilities. I get all of that. I'm also familiar with people trying to struggle through sidewalks covered with snow. I guess we'll have to see how this operates. We also have an active transportation master plan, and I think that it encourages people to get out and exercise, and that's a little difficult. But I understand that there are conflicting interests here. And essentially, I think what we're being told, Madam Chair, is that this current policy is very much in line with A, our policy up until now, and B, with provincial regulations. Is that correct?
George?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Second or third question I had was, if I might, Madam Chair, do we coordinate our snowplow routes with the region and the province where there's where they come in contact with each other?
George?
Through the chair again, so with regards to regional and provincial levels of service or requirements, so the requirements from a provincial minimum maintenance standard or OREG 23902 are different than our requirements. So for example, the province primarily plows class 1 roadways, and the trigger for a class 1 roadway, for example, for snowfall is 2.5 centimeters versus ours for class 3s of 8 centimeters. And they actually have to clear the snow in 4 hours. And we have a significantly longer period of time for class 3s and much more so for class 4s and 5s. So because we're really operating on different classes of roadways, we have different requirements. And as such, we all have to have our own different programs to ensure that we're in compliance with OREG 23902 again, and reducing our exposure to risk.
Mayor Redekop?
Thank you. So I presume that we have some mechanism for dealing with situations where a regional road or a provincial class 1 road go past a municipal road and leaves a furrow of snow. Those furrows will be cleared less frequently off of the municipal roadway. I'm thinking, how do we deal with that, or how have we dealt with it, if I might, Madam Chair?
So through the chair, so those types of details at intersections and so on, that's something where we integrate with the region and or the province. So if we do notice through plowing or through road patrol that there are any issues there when we're dealing with intersections that we intersect with either on province or with the region, we ensure that we clear it. And even if we're just clearing around the bend of an intersection that is a regional road, we'll do that if we're there, just ensuring that the primary concern here is road safety. So that's how we've handled it in the past, and we'll continue to.
And one final question, Madam Chair, that is, the report indicates that the municipality can save about $100,000 by doing some maneuvering with respect to who's doing the plowing and the nature of the routes. And I've asked Mr. Stojanovich about this, and Mr. Walsh as well, in particular, whether the $100,000 savings comes at a cost of any expense in terms of level of service. And I think it would be helpful if Mr. Stojanovich could respond to that question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so and through the chair again. So there's absolutely no sacrificing levels of service. What we've done is gone through an optimization process for all of our routes, for the plowing routes, for the sand routes and the salt routes, to come up with strategized areas and plans that incorporate both contractors and town staff to perform the operations. And through that optimization process for plowing, we've been able to reduce the need from 10 pieces of contracted equipment to 6. And with that comes the $100,000 in savings. The $100,000 comes into, just in rough terms, each piece of equipment, we roughly are spending about $25,000 annually for winter control, times 4 pieces of equipment, that's $100,000 per season. Then over the course of the plan, we're going to achieve over $400,000 in projected savings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to congratulate staff for the work on this. Obviously, planning for winter operations is very difficult, challenging. It changes from year to year depending on the weather. And these additional efficiencies, I think, are extremely important. And they're a good indication of how prudent and frugal our municipal staff is. So thank you.
Any further questions on this report? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report? The report carries. That brings us to report number IS 36-2020, award of the 2020-2024 winter operations equipment tender. I need a mover. Thank you, Councillor Zanko. That report is now on the floor for comments and questions. Anyone? Seeing none, I have a few comments. Number one, it's a very detailed report if you go to the winter control plan itself. And I've had a chance to talk to Mr. Walt earlier today in regards to the snow plows that were listed for different areas. I see that Stevensville is mentioned 4 times, but Black Creek isn't mentioned at all. So I'm assuming when I see Stevensville West, Stevensville East twice, I should be seeing Black Creek in one of those areas, right? Mr. George?
That is correct. So it's just the way we've characterized the areas, but certainly we are taking care of Black Creek. Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. The other thing is in regards to salting, I comment again to Mr. Walsh that here in Stevensville on Main Street West, where it hits the lights, coming down West Main Street, there's quite a significant little hill there. It may not look that much, but when it's icy and it's wintertime and your yellow turns to red, there's a lot of slipping and sliding there. So I'm hoping that area, it's not listed under your salting, one of the areas to be salted, but I'm hoping that you would consider that.
We can certainly monitor that area. Both myself and our supervisor knows it well, and Nick lives, in town there in Stevensville. So we're in tune with that. So we'll keep a very close eye on that. And as we've noted through the winter operations plan, if there are some modifications to make based on need, based on optimization, and based on us going through the plan, over one season, we will make those modifications and we'll certainly provide that updated information to council.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report? The report carries. That brings us to new business inquiries, and there's an inquiry by Councillor Butler, the September 14th, 2020 Council Committee meeting requesting an update on the boardwalk for Bernard Beach. And I understand Mr. Walsh, you'll be responding.
Yes, I will, Chair. So in response to the inquiry regarding the status of the boardwalk at Bernard Beach, construction design documents have been finalized for public input. IS staff is working with the communications advisor to gather public input through the town's new engagement platform, Let's Talk Fort Erie. This input is expected to be completed by the end of October. The construction documents will be reviewed following this input, and a construction tender is anticipated to be released by mid-November. I would like to add that construction is expected to be completed before beach season next year, certainly.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I think that we're on target, so it's going to be great to get that community engagement and see what they say, and then have it built in time for next beach season. I think everybody's going to be very happy. So thank you very much.
Any further comments or questions? Any new inquiries? Seeing none, that brings us to business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll hand the chair back to Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. That takes us to corporate and community services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Corporate and Community Services is now in session. We have a presentation and delegation by the Fire Chief, Ed Melanson, with regards to the Fort Erie Emergency Services Strategic Plan presentation. Chief?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you see the presentation the way it is on there?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. And I can't see, has Administrative Assistant Colleen Bandy joined us?
Yes, she has.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present to council and the citizens of Fort Erie, the residents of Fort Erie. First of all, I'd like to bring to light that I'm wearing pink epaulets today. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and to bring that to people's forefront, we wear pink epaulets in the emergency services. So if people wonder why we're doing that, that is the reason. So what I brought to you today is a short presentation on what we did to get to this point. It's about our timeline, how we got to where we are, who was involved in it, some snippets from it, and then what our next steps may be. I'm really looking forward to any comments that you may have or any questions. A significant amount of time was spent on this by a lot of people. We did it internally. We did not use any outside like consultative services, et cetera. It was done holistically and organically by our department. So again, very excited about that. So this is the process that we used. It didn't look quite like this. The one that we used had gravy stains in it, and I couldn't reproduce it. So this is more or less the process that we used of where we are today, where do we want to be, and how are we going to get there. So a group of individuals, and I'll show you that in the timeline, but a large group of individuals got together. We came up with 4 separate committees and then put them together. But we looked at our present mission statement. What are we doing now? How do our customers perceive us? And we looked at a SWOT analysis, which is our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and truly tore our fire department apart in a good way, and looked at what we needed to do to move on. Once we had those SWOT put together, we looked at truly, and this was the most difficult part, is truly looking at what our committees thought was our core values. And from the core values, we were able to move on to what our vision, mission statements were. And from that, what strategies were we going to put together based on a gap analysis. So this process took us almost 1.5 years to do. There was lots of input initially, even from before we started this process, from Councillor Noyes and Councillor Butler were engaged in early conversations that they may or may not have known about this, but I did take what they said and put it towards this. So the timeline is that the last strategic plan that the fire department had was in 1996. and our last master plan was 2004. The purpose of the strategic plan is we don't necessarily attach time or money to it, but is the foundation on which we create a master plan, which is the vision on how what we're going to do. It's going to put resources to it. And from that, we were able to put the operational plan together year after year, which everyone agrees to. We reviewed our mission and vision statements. And then I was lucky enough to meet two volunteer strategic planning experts, one by the name of Cal Miller and one by the name of George Orr. George I actually met while I was on vacation in Florida, and that's where the gravy stain came from. But these two gentlemen were instrumental in helping us lay a framework or a path to move forward. From there, we created a process and we advertised municipal-wide for volunteers. We ended up with 4 stakeholder groups. There was the retired firefighter group, the present firefighter group, the town employee group, and the citizens group. And those are in the report on who attended. The names are long. The number of names is long, but they met separately. And each time I laid out legislatively what we need to do as a fire department, calls that we've gone to. They were given a lot of information about us and where my vision is, where I would like to go, but that didn't necessarily mean or equate to what we ended up at. Each group met separately twice, and there was a lot of brainstorming over a couple weekends about how, what they thought. And then we met as a group all together to define what our core values were. And this was a very difficult but enjoyable process. From there, the vision and mission statements were put together, and which you saw in the report and in the strategic plan. From those, staff determined the directions based on committee recommendations using the SWOT and gap analysis. The first draft was put together and presented to the committee for input. And then the second draft was given to our advisory, which is the district chiefs for input. And now we're at the point where we're making presentation to council. Our core values are that the group that came up with is to be inclusive, progressive, accountable, to be a community, one department united. They were put together, well-trained, and to have integrity. Now, the one I want to bring out the most, and it's where we're truly looking at things as inclusive. It's when we talked about being inclusive, we talked about what that means. And truly, when we look at diversity, diversity would mean that everybody gets a pair of shoes. But to be inclusive, that means that everybody gets a pair of shoes that fits. So this is the reason why this was one of the #1 on our list. And if you look at some of our reports that have come forward lately, you look at changes that we've made that tries to be inclusive to our community so that all can see how we should be, and that we think about all of our people that live here, no matter what sex or creed they are. So the vision statement is that Fort Erie Fire Department is a progressive, highly trained, united team dedicated to serving the community through inclusivity, integrity, and accountability. And the mission statement, which gives us a bright future moving ahead, is the Fort Erie Fire Department's mission is to safely protect life, property, and environment through the skilled and continued delivery of public education, fire prevention, and emergency response. We tried to mimic, and I'm going to thank her ahead of this, and will thank her after the fact, but a lot of the bones of this was put together by the team that I discussed, and certainly the vision on how we should do this was mine, but Colleen Bandy certainly was able to flesh this out to make it look like it's an amazing presentation, but also so that it mimicked the strategic plan that was brought forward and approved by council for the town. So we tried to tie all of that together. So if the format looks similar, it's because Colleen did such an amazing job in putting it all together. Some of the highlights in it is strategic plan 1.3 is to reflect the public we serve at all levels of the organization. This speaks to our need or our belief that our organization should look like the organization that we serve. So there's 50% of our, approximately 50% of our citizens happen to be female. We should have as many females in our organization as we possibly can to reflect that. We should reflect the different nationalities, the different religious affiliations. We should look at all of those things when we're delivering service to our municipality. And that is the one that we really, really are concentrating on. Strategic objective 2.1 is maintain a volunteer fire department model through investment and engagement. And this has been our mantra from the beginning. We believe that we will be able to deliver using the volunteer model, which is the most cost-effective model. And as long as we can deliver the service that our citizens demand and our council allows us to, then we should do it under the volunteer model. And that's one of our strategic objectives. Last one on this page is implement an accepted fire-specific quality system to allow continuity and efficiencies for future needs. This speaks to that I believe that our fire department is one of the greatest on the planet. You've heard me talk about this before, but to prove that, you need to put things on paper, you need to be accredited, and you need people to identify that you are one of those things. So it's a very important business mantra of mine, and it's also, I think, a business that if we were to do this, we would see those efficiencies, we would see that world-class level that I'm talking about. We need to make sure that we build cohesion and camaraderie between all districts and divisions. We've created a public education division that is bar none, one of the rarest in Ontario, strictly with volunteers. And we're in the process now of making sure that our divisions work well together, but we need to do more work on that, and that's what that objective is. We need to invest in our leaders, and that's what objective 5.3 is. And that works to supervision, making sure people are competent, managing risk, but also developing people so that they can see where they want to go, and we help them get there, including the chair that I sit in now. And then at 6.3 is review and measure levels of service to confirm we do what we say we do. That's one of the most important things is council gives us marching orders per se in our regulatory bylaw that says this is what services we supply. We need to make sure that we are supplying those services, that we measure those services, and that we do everything we can to improve on those services. Our next steps is the master plan development, which honestly, we're working on now, but the development would happen in the last of this year and the first 2 quarters of next year. That I present in the early Q3, the master plan, and we use that to develop our annual operation plans. And then part of every good plan is that you review and change as time goes on. So both these plans would be looked at annually to make sure that we are covering everything as life changes. This is our mantra that I say just about every day, but we need to say what we do what we say, and prove it. And this bottom graphic is sort of how that would work. This is our fire department. This slide makes me smile, but it's a whole bunch of different individuals. Everyone is a different color of rock, and everyone has a different number of teeth or a different number of eyes, or no eyes and no teeth. But it certainly makes me smile about the wide range of our community and how all of us have the ability to contribute. So I'm very, very excited about it. I just want to give special thanks again to Colleen on the amazing work she did on the report, and to all the committees that put their efforts forward to make us one day one of the best fire departments that there is. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Just want to thank you for that very comprehensive report. And I know how proud you are of it and the time that you've all put into it. I think it goes without saying that we're blessed here with the fire department that we have, and the people that are in it. And I think you all know that council certainly is very supportive of the efforts that you've all made. And truly, you have made a big difference since you've come here, and we're all very appreciative of that. And I'd also like to thank Colleen. Colleen's very busy over there, and I appreciate all of her work as well. Can I get a mover and seconder for the report?
You don't need a mover. You don't need a mover, Chair.
Just a mover. Yeah, thank you. Any comments or questions to the report? Your worship.
I just want to echo your comments, Chair, and say that this is well done, both the report and the presentation by the chief. And I think we all appreciate how fortunate we are in the town of Fort Erie to have such an accomplished group of paid firefighters at the administration level and volunteers. The one thing that I've learned, I think, if I might, Chair, to the chief, is that despite the fact that we have a volunteer fire suppressing force entirely, those volunteers have to receive the same training as any paid professional firefighter in Ontario. Is that correct?
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor, absolutely. There is no there's no distancing, separation, or difference between the requirements that are laid out for a volunteer firefighter or a career firefighter.
Thank you. And Chair, I know that some of our volunteers are actually also professional paid firefighters in other communities. We're very fortunate. And that's, I think, an indication of how much our volunteer firefighters, professionals, love their community and are willing to serve the community, because it's an unbelievable amount of time. And again, thank you, Chief, for leading that remarkable group of men and women. And the diversity and inclusion piece is very interesting because, as you know, there is a diversity and inclusion coalition starting up in Fort Erie to help to provide a lens through which policies such as yours can be developed. So thank you.
Any further questions of the chief? Councillor Butler.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make a comment as well. And I agree with everything that's been said so far between Mr. Chair and his worship. But it's one of the best presentations I've seen in a long time and very thorough. And I give you all the kudos in the world for your team working together to put this together. It's an amazing strategic plan, and it's a model for a lot of organizations to follow. But thank you for presenting that.
Anything further? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Any new business inquiries? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I have a question in regards to the broadband and internet survey that the town is doing. I noticed that when I went onto the website that it was there encouraging people to, to complete the survey and send it back to the town, and that. And I had a chance to talk to Kelly earlier today about that. My concern is about what about those of us who don't have internet or broadband service in our community? How are we getting information or communicating their needs through the survey? Is there another way? And I know Kelly was saying that's a good thought. I'm not sure how we would go about it, whether it would be direct mail to some of the more rural areas. The other thought I had was two of the schools themselves, because a lot of there's a choice here for virtual learning. And again, and I can speak for my ward 6, there's a lot of areas that don't have any service whatsoever. and therefore the option of virtual learning, it just doesn't exist. And I'm thinking perhaps the schools can help us with perhaps touching base with some of the parents in the outlying areas. And I'm not sure whether we can put something in one of the mailouts that we do, or we can do a direct mail the survey and ask them to return it. I don't know, but I do think we have to make sure that we do capture those people who don't have internet service or broadband service right now.
Your worship, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I know that there's been some outreach with respect to this, because I was listening to the radio the other day and heard an advertisement for this survey on the radio. I think it was 101.1, which is a Fort Erie centered service. So I would think that it would be helpful if we could have Carolee Grummett, who is the head of the Economic Development Services, provide council with a little bit of background, and if there are additional ways that that survey can be broadcast, certainly the more the merrier. I know they have over 600 responses to date.
Thank you, your worship. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, and I appreciate Mayor Redekop's comments. Yes, Kelly was also saying that the response has been pretty good to date, which I'm pleased to see. I know 600 doesn't seem like a lot of responses, but I know we've done surveys in the past that we only get a fraction of that. So people are definitely interested. I know one of the questions that I'm asked most often in Ward 6 is, concerns about internet and not being able to connect, or having a connection that's just not reliable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further inquiries? Seeing none, the business status report. Anybody? Back to you, your worship.
Fine job, Councillor McDermott. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings coming up? Councillor McDermott and then Councillor Noyes.
This isn't exactly a meeting, your worship, but on Saturday, the Fort Erie Multicultural folk are going to be doing an environmental cleanup on Jarvis Street. So they'll be out doing that on Saturday, and I'd like to thank Kelly Walsh and his team for give me the opportunity to get all this work done. And they're going to pick up the bags for us after the work is done. So I really appreciate that. And that's all I got.
And do you know what time the cleanup is on Saturday?
I am not certain on that yet.
That's this Saturday coming, which is
the Saturday coming.
What day is that?
October 17th.
Okay. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. There are two meetings. One on October 22nd. It's usually held at 9 a.m. for the Fort Erie non-for-profit housing. And there's another meeting for the traffic coordinating meeting October 28th at noon through Zoom. The not-for-profit, we usually actually meet in person, socially distancing.
Good. And if not, wearing masks. Any other meetings? If there are none, Councillor Dubanow, you look like you're poised to move to adjourn.
I'd be happy to, your worship.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of adjourning? That is done. Thank you.